So what's this one?
This is one of my own.
Have you given it a name?
Not yet.
We will name it today.
The way I came up with this fly was I was looking at various conventional tackle rigs that I used to use when I fished with everything, and one of my favorite flies was like a pig and jig setup, which is a heavy jig with a lot of legs, various other materials in them, and then you would put like a piece of pork rind on the back of it, flipping and pitching and flipping and that kind of thing. So I wanted to develop a fly that kind of emulated that. And I fooled around with a bunch of patterns, but I finally settled on this one because it works. It's big. It's not really what I would call a finesse fly, and I think in the water it most closely resembles a large crayfish, and it's a good pattern. You can fish it off the bottom. You can fish it like a streamer. It's just a good big buggy bass pattern, and there's no I'm doing this one in tans because that's kind of the trend today, but I've done it in probably my favorite pattern is a combination of chartreuse and olive, but it's got a lot of contrasting colors in it, and it's just a good fly. So I'm starting out with these hackles because I like the barring in them, and I'm going to make them all about the same, very similar to a deceiver. I'm going to put 2 down each side, and I'll get them all around the same size here, approximately. And I'll start this because whoever's not here can catch up. So now I am going to flatten these quills a little bit. Just again, I'm just applying about 30% to that, and I'm hoping that sort of flattens out. I'm going to tie these in from the back side. Just so it sits on the hook properly. So when it because it's hard to get them to sit properly. I don't want them flat. That didn't quite do what I wanted it to. This is the tricky part. Anytime you're tying with these hackles, they always want to go off in one direction or another, like that is. I'm going to try catching some of the. That's better.
Sorry, what size hook is that?
This is I think it's probably a size 2 stinger hook.
2 stinger.
So I'm going to put 4 of these in, 2 down each side, and again, this is very, very similar to the deceiver. That one stayed up nice. And I think that this fly, when it's in the water, as I said, I think it most closely represents a larger crayfish, but it's the same type of profile that I would, or the same type of tail that I would use on a popper. Perfect.
So you want them splaying out from?
Yeah, I'm using the natural curve of the feather, so that when it's in the water and moving, it's gonna pulse a little bit. If you tie them in the opposite direction, the whole thing is just gonna collapse. Where this is gonna add a little bit of animation when you stop and start the fly. So I'm just securing those down like that. And now these pig and jig rigs they're mainly all rubber. So I'm going to put a variety of colors in here. I'm going to put 4 in on the back, and I'll just start those on the top, get them coming down each side one way or another. 2 on that side. And 2 on the side, the opposite side. You can't beat rubber legs and bass flies. Not all patterns call for them, but if you, even if you're tying just woolly buggers, it doesn't hurt to run a couple of 4 legs off the back side and a couple off the front. Something that sort of splays out and just again provides a little bit of animation. For this, I'm using. This is just something that I had on my desk. I could put dubbing in a dubbing loop for this. Basically, what this part's doing is it's gonna prop up the marabou that I'm eventually gonna put on the fly, and provide a little bit of color. This is just a
Polar chenille.
yeah, like a polar chenille or a Palmer chenille. It's fairly long, but again, I'm not so concerned about this fly being perfect. This is basically an in-your-face kind of. And again, I wouldn't really call this a finesse fly, but it catches a lot of fish. It's been a dynamite pattern for me. Now, as I'm wrapping this, I'm going to keep it edge to edge, and palmer it back as I go. So with each turn, I'm pulling it back on both the top and the bottom. And I'm going to run that just about to the eyes. I'll just leave enough on it for the collar. But if you wanted to make this a little more flary, if that's a word, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. I'm going to put a dubbing ball in front of this, so that when I tie in the marabou, it really props the marabou up. Cut that off. Now I'm just gonna tidy this up a little bit just by pulling all of this back and just catching it. So now it looks a little more civilized. And I'll build up a little bit of a ramp here just to keep it tidy. And sometimes if you can catch some of that material in there, so you can just go in and pull some of the that webby stuff out. Now I'll take my tri-lobal dubbing, which is here. I'm going to use a fair amount on this because I want that dubbing ball to really prop that marabou up. Again, if I just tied the marabou in now without anything underneath it, it's just going to collapse. This will help to hold it up, and it'll also show through the marabou. But I'm going to put a fairly heavy dubbing ball underneath it. I'm also going to stick a couple more legs in.
I think you need a beard on this one.
So again, I'm just going to run that down one side. And a couple down the left side. And then I'll make that ball fairly big. Now I want to take that thread and use it. I'm gonna come right back into the dubbing ball with it, so I get almost a wall there, or a ramp. So when I put the marabou on, the marabou is going to come over that, and it's going to, when it's in the water, it's going to create a lot more undulation. Okay. Now this part, it doesn't really matter in which order you put this, but I always use two fairly contrasting colors. So I chose this brown and this tan today. I'm going to find a couple of reasonably good ones if I can, as long as it moves in the water. I'm going to find that quill, which is right there. I'm going to tie it in from the tips so that I get a fairly natural taper, and try and get that one's a little screwy, as you can see, but I'm going to try and get the natural curve sweeping towards the back. So I'm going to start that right tight against that dubbing ball. Again, I pull a little bit of the quill out. And I'll wrap this. Again, I'm pulling all the barbs back on the top and the bottom of each turn. Now see how that ramp has pushed that, as I said, prop that marabou up, and it's going to stay like that. It's not going to develop a memory and collapse. It's going to stay if you keep it edge to edge, just like that. I'll do one more.
Have you tried this fly for pike?
It would probably work for pike. I don't like pike.
Too many teeth?
It's fine, man.
Secure that like that.
There is a pike. It's on my list since last year. I lost him 3 times.
Big pike?
You know what, Rob? It's probably at least 30 inch.
Is that right? Now, as I said, I can sort of clean that up a little bit, just by pulling those back. And then add a couple more legs. on the right. And 2 on the left. Now, for the front collar, I'm just going to put a couple of turns of this in, again, just to give it some contrast. I'm not going to make it real heavy. It'll be like 3 turns at the maximum. That's a pretty nice hackle, as marabou goes.
Yeah, I know,
Again, I'll expose those tips.
Sure.
And soft loop, soft wrap, and then tie it in. Then I'm going to finish that off in the front.
find something else. All right, thank you very much. Yeah, so yeah, I'll be signing up for that. All right, thank you.
So I'll shoot for 3 turns. Oh, I got a leg stuck. Yeah, there.
I went on the store and got some pictures of that. Yeah. Wow. That's the guacamole color one we use?
I should have exposed that. But.
This is not a fashion statement here.
You could use, depending on the weight, you could use anything as far as the eyes go. I think I would, on this fly, I would prefer, because I want the eyes as a trigger, I would prefer like a 3D type eye, which I don't have any in here, but you know the ones I'm talking about with the epoxied eyes in them. And then I'm going to come in behind it again, because I'm going to finish this off with a little bit of an ice dub or a trilobal dubbed head. And I'll cross wrap that. Oh, I got some right there.
Charter cap, flame wash.
That's good. I don't know if this is ice dub or trilobal. No, it is ice dub.
It's low in carb.
Ice dub. Ice dub dubs a lot better than trilobal. Trilobal dubbing has a very similar effect, but it's much more coarse and it doesn't go around the hook. I use trilobal dubbing a lot in my steelhead flies when I'm putting them in dubbing loops. The ice dub dubs a lot nicer. Keep all that to the back. Make a couple turns in behind, and then I'm going to cross wrap that a couple or 3 times, however many it takes. Make sure that the bottom is relatively covered. my original name for this was just the creature, because I couldn't really think of anything that represented it. I didn't want to call it a crayfish, but again, I think that's what the bass probably most mistake it as.
Well, I think you call it the bacon fly.
The bacon fly.
Yeah. Well, Heald's bacon fly.
Heels go-to.
Yeah, that's what they go to. There you go.
The go-to.
Yeah, they go to.
And finish it off. Now, a fly like this, I would normally, I said I don't very often use head cement. I would put a little head cement on this because it's not a fly that you're going to lose a lot of. You're not casting these on 3X. You're casting this on 12, 14 pound, and you're not going to lose a lot of them. So rather than have it come unraveled, I'd put a little bit of head cement on it, but that's it. Again, it's a fairly simple fly, and you can use any color combination you want. That's the. I don't have a lot of my own patterns that I can really say work well, but that's a fairly simple fly to tie. And as you can see, and it's a great. I use that. I was fishing with a guide in the Muskokas about 7 or 8 years ago, and he wanted us to catch fish on top water, so we were throwing mice on Lake Joe, and there was bass all over the place, largemouth all over the place, and we could see them, but they weren't coming to the surface. And Josh just happened to be going through my boxes, and he saw a couple of the olive ones that I had there, and he said, well, let's try that. And that we caught fish on that all afternoon. We were working it just like I would have pig and jig with a flipping stick, just casting it right into the school and just letting it flutter down. And inevitably, one would come on. We were watching the whole thing. You could see them, and they couldn't lay off it. So that was when it kind of, I said, I got something here, and I've been using it on the sardine for the past 6 or 7 years, 8 years, and I do it in the tan. Olive and chartreuse is good. Two different oranges, like you could certainly do an orange, put an orange in that same mix and have a good color contrast.